Hello and welcome to Landscape Photography World, the podcast for everyone passionate about landscape photography. I'm Grant Swinburne and I'll be your host on this show, talking to landscape photographers about their motivations, likes and dislikes. In this episode I chat with Simone Osborne, a Sydney-based landscape photographer whose global adventures have shaped her stunning body of work. Originally from Germany, Simone's journey has taken her through Singapore, Korea, Indonesia, South Africa and finally Australia, each location leaving an indelible mark on her photography. Simone shares how her love for photography began with a simple point-and-shoot camera and grew into a passion for capturing images, seascapes and the spirit of adventure. She discusses the importance of light, careful planning and immersing herself in the environment to truly capture the essence of a place. With years of experience running photography trips, Simone also provides valuable tips on organising successful tours and connecting with fellow photographers. Throughout our conversation, Simone opens up about her editing workflow, her creative inspirations, and how photography brings her deep joy and fulfilment. Whether photographing breathtaking seascapes or intimate lifestyle sessions, Simone's work is a reflection of her travels and the beauty she finds in every corner of the world. I hope you enjoy the show. G'day Simone, welcome to Landscape Photography World. How are you going?
Good, thanks, Grant. Thank you for having me. I'm very excited to be here.
I'm very excited to have you on. I love your work and it's been, you've been on my list for a little while and it's nice to tick you off and get you in front of the camera, even though I'm not in front of the camera right now. But we'll sort all of that out when my computer decides that it's finished updating its software. Why don't we start, pardon me, why don't we start with where photography started for you and what photography is in your life?
All right. I was born in Germany, and as a young girl, I always was into photography. So when we went on family holidays, I always had a point and shoot and took pictures of our holidays. At that time, it was still a film photography, so I had to go to the chemist and all, and then get it back. But then I guess as my life continued and I moved to Australia after I met my husband in Bali, I don't know, I guess probably a little bit more about myself. So I was here for 5 years in Sydney, and then we moved to overseas. We moved to Singapore. We lived in Indonesia, Korea, and then the last posting was Johannesburg.
Okay.
But so my photography really started when I was living in Indonesia. We traveled a lot. We just got to experience all the islands over there, and I got my first DSLR camera there.
Nice.
So I did that I took my first beginner course with a Canadian photographer over there called Melbourne. And that was the start of my journey in photography.
Okay, cool. And what is photography to you? What does it mean to you in your life at the moment?
I think it just makes me really happy. It's just my happy place to go out and photograph. And also I've just taken a group of people from Australia to Africa and showed them a safari over there, which we did a lot of wildlife photography, which was amazing.
Yeah, I want to talk to you a little bit about that. I know it's Landscape Photography World, but I'm always interested in experiences like that. That sounds wonderful.
Yes, I guess landscape photography, I am a passionate landscape photographer. I started off, as I say, in Indonesia and then in South Africa as well, where we lived. That was our last posting. It was a little bit harder to photograph there because living in Johannesburg isn't quite the safest city in the world. So it was a bit hard to really go out and do a lot of landscape photography. But whenever we traveled, I was able to take landscapes. I was always interested in seascapes. And also, I guess, a great trip I did was going to Namibia, and just the landscapes there is absolutely mind-blowing. And then when we moved back to Australia, to Sydney about 3 years ago, I'm fortunate enough to live on the northern beaches, and just to have learned and revisited all the beautiful beaches here got me really, really into landscape and seascape photography.
Awesome. And so what, I guess, started the interest in turning it into art as opposed to just documentary sort of photography, which is where a lot of people start. It's usually a travel thing or hiking, and you go, okay, I'm interested in that mountain looks interesting. I'm not sure exactly how to compose it, but let's take a shot of it. It's a snapshot and it's a record of my trip. A lot of people start that way,
Mm.
but at some point something switches in their mind and it becomes art. When did that happen for you?
I would probably say maybe 4 or 5 years ago. As I
Hmm.
say, when I went into Namibia, and I think the biggest thing I've learned is I took a lot of travel photography all my life, if I want to say that. But then I guess I realized what makes a really good picture is actually to get up early and get the right light, or stay up late and get the right light. So I think that probably was the switch point in myself to say, why are my photos never that good? They were great record shots, as she say, but they weren't actually any art or that wows you away. So that's when I realized it's all about the light, and I have
Yeah.
to get up early and be there at the right time.
Absolutely. And I guess, where did that love of the landscape genre sort of start? Was it always there, something that you'd always, looking at your experiences, always wanted to do, or is it something that sort of came at about that same time as the art starting?
I guess probably the same time as the art started. I think when I first, after doing my first course and then dabbling into photography, I went into all different genres. I tried a bit of macro, I tried a bit of still life, and I don't know, a little bit of everything. But I guess in a way, I did find my real love for landscapes. Just also, I'm very adventurous. I love hiking. I love to be out in the outdoors and in nature. So it's just that connection to be out there with the nature. And just as I said, when I realized that it's all about the light, it's like just to see that light change and the magic happen, just puts me in my happy place.
Yeah, yeah. Do you remember the first landscape photo you captured that made you feel this is it? And what was that moment like for you?
It probably go back to that Namibia trip I
Yeah.
did. It was a special trip as well because it doesn't rain in the desert very often. And then so when we went there, and we especially went because we heard that there was water in the desert, and just I guess that just yeah, I just was I think the start of my journey for the love of landscape photography, just to be there and be in the nature, feeling it, being in the moment, and capturing those special magic moments.
Yeah, yeah. Do you have a person that's been the greatest influence on your work, or is it a person or a place or a moment in nature that has made you go in certain directions with your work?
I think I have had a bit of influence. So, having lived in Johannesburg, I had a mentor there when I first moved there, which when I dabbled in all the different genres, just to learn as much as what I could learn, because I guess living in Indonesia, it was a little bit of a language barrier there. But then in Joburg, the English was there, and then I just I found this mentor. There was three other ladies with me, and we just we just were so hungry to learn and get as much information as we possibly can. His name is Robbie Asperling, and
Hmm.
he just taught us everything we knew. And then I think besides then the traveling over in Africa, also coming back to Sydney and having the seascapes at my front doorstep really changed my journey. And I think a lot of people back in South Africa said too, is that's when it just happened, because I guess suddenly I was free to go out. I was free to photograph. I didn't have to worry about safety numbers of looking behind my back and stuff. Yeah, just being back home in a way, and being able to go to all the beautiful rock pools we have at our doorsteps really probably was another major changing point for me or my
Yeah.
journey.
And I guess I'm really interested in how people connect with a place before they get out and take photos. do you rely more on instinct, research, or experience? So what I mean by that, are you a planner or somebody that just goes out and says, all right, here I go out the door. I'm not sure where I'm going to go. I'll pick where I go on the way and then just turn up and shoot whatever's in front of me.
I'd say I'm more of a planner. I It's not necessarily about listening to all the weather apps. If I feel like going out, I do make my plan beforehand. I guess also with our sunrise photography, it is when you go on your own, it's nice to be at your location or recce your location before, just to have an idea where you park, where you go. It's dark. So you need to understand where you're actually going. So I'm a bit of a planner that way, and I do a lot of research. Same also when it's travel locations, I research as much as possible. I guess not necessarily about the right season or the right time or all of that. That sort of comes with it, but yeah, I am a bit of a planner.
Nice, nice. And in that planning, are you doing pre-visualization? So you've got an idea about the comps and the shots that you're going to be taking? Are you getting that detailed, or is it more just general, that's the area I'm going to go and then I'm going to search in the landscape when I get there?
Yeah, I would say a bit more general, like where I want to go. But then I think when you arrive at your location, you don't know about the light, the weather, the clouds. So I think you feel the place when you arrive there. It's not always about just taking your camera out straight away. It's just like, yeah, being there, taking it all in, and then figuring out what it is, how you feel, and what mood you're in, and what you want to capture, plus the conditions of the light and the sun and everything.
Yeah, yeah. I think you bring up a really good point that that observation, particularly when you're visiting a place for the first time, and that observation of how the light hits different surfaces and so forth really does make a difference, I think, to the way that you go about shooting a new location. Is that true for you?
Yeah, I agree. It's just, yeah, you have to go and observe a little bit. I think when you go in and you just take pictures, I'm not sure you're going to walk away with anything that you're entirely happy with. So I
Mm.
think just to observe, to, yeah, as you said, to figure out where the light hits, how it all works, and then you feel it, and then you get your camera out and you take your pictures. And often I would say, you have to revisit a location. Not only one, the first time is never probably your best time, even though you could get the best shot, but it's just, yeah, once you know what to expect, I think it's then a little bit easier to probably go and think, what is it exactly what I want to take today? I know where the light's coming, where the sun's coming up, and all of that. And even then, I think it all depends on the conditions, the waves, the tide.
Absolutely.
There's so many things that implicate that what you're going to take that day.
Mm, mm. Is there a specific place that you keep returning to, and why does that place hold meaning for you?
I really love the South Coast here in Australia, and I think probably many people do. I don't know, I've been there probably 3 times or 4 times. I don't know. I always, if my husband says, let's go somewhere, I'm like, let's go down the South Coast. It's just so beautiful and rugged, and just the photographic opportunities are just incredible. Then again, I would say there's still the beaches here on the northern beaches are also that you can go anytime to any different beach, and they're all beautiful. I love North Narrabeen. I love Parramatta. I love. They're all great. So I think, yeah, we're very fortunate to live in such a beautiful place.
Yeah, I think Sydney's one of the best places for, pardon me, seascaping in particular. But you're not that far from the Blue Mountains, the Central Coast. You've got the Illawarra, which is fantastic again on the way down to the South Coast. So, yeah, I think there's just so many opportunities here in Sydney that it's one of the reasons why I love shooting around the place as well.
Yeah, and Grant, I'm still learning. I've only been back in Australia for 3 years, so it's like
Yeah.
I'm still, there's so much to explore for me still, even though I've lived here before, but in 20 years we were away. So I'm still learning. There's still so much. I've been to the Blue Mountains and I love the mountains. Yeah, so there's so many beautiful places to photograph here that yeah, they're just can keep us busy for a long time.
Absolutely, absolutely. Do you set yourself creative goals in your photography?
I guess I love to travel and explore and find new places. So I would say that's probably my creative goal. I always have an idea where I would love to go next and then set my mind on it and do a lot of research. I've been fortunate enough to, since I've been back, to travel over to New Zealand, to the South Island, which I think is
Nice.
spectacular, and I would love to go back there. There's still so much unfinished business and things to explore. So yeah, I would say that's my creative goal, is just explore as much as I possibly can and just take as many beautiful landscapes that I can go at, which comes with my love for travel.
Mm, mm. Do you experiment much in your photography, and do you take risks photographically? I don't mean with your safety, but I mean, do you take risks with your photography and push the boundaries, or are you still, or do you find yourself, sorry, sticking to a genre or a style, and that's the way that you've developed how you take photos?
I think sometimes I get a little bit set in my ways and probably do the same thing, but then I do set myself goals and think I should go out and try more long exposures, or rather than going really wide, go a little bit more on intimate landscapes or seascapes. I do set those goals because I think otherwise you get a little bit bored with your own work as well.
Yeah,
As much as the conditions can be fabulous, it's also nice to experiment. So yes, I do set myself those creative goals.
cool. And how do you deal with the feelings where you've tried to experiment with something and it hasn't quite worked? Is How do you work around those creative choices that you've made and make other choices?
I guess sometimes it just didn't work out, and I go home and think, maybe I'll just have to try again and work a bit harder on it. But I guess now that we have the opportunity to go out any day we possibly want, makes it a little bit easier, because I think if I would travel, I would probably be more disappointed if I tried something and I would walk away with no shot whatsoever. But I think being able to go out as much as I want, I can be more experimental. And then even if I get disappointed in it, let's say a long exposure didn't quite work out, or didn't quite achieve what I wanted to get, I just would learn from my mistakes, or and then try and go back and work harder. And I think with photography and our photography journey, there's always something new to learn. So it's never, you never say, oh, I'm sad it didn't work out. You just like, you try harder, and then you get, one day you get that shots you really wanted.
Yeah, yeah. I'm interested in that learning process. Have you, you mentioned a couple of courses that you did. Was that more focused on the technical side of things at the beginning, or were you asking more for things around the creative side of photography?
Initially, it was more about the technical side. And then I think, I don't know, it was one of my courses I did in South Africa was actually a landscape course. And we went down to Cape Town, and I don't know, I just really walked away from that thing. I just didn't get it. I couldn't see it. But then I guess as I walked away from it, and my skills developed, and I guess I was more interested into landscape photography, I think I did get it. I did develop those skills. I think what also happens, I think the whole composition has changed a little bit. So I think when I started learning was all about foreground, middle ground, and background, whereby now if you look at, it's a lot about the leading lines, and I guess people shoot for Instagram in portrait format to make sure your eye leads and it fits and all of that. So I don't know if I truly believe in it. I still believe it's, the landscape has to speak to you, the seascape has to speak to you, and it has to be the right composition, of course, but it also has to, you have to have a connection with it rather than shooting for, let's say, an Instagram or something like that.
Do you think your success in your photography is due to your ability to communicate. Obviously, the way that you're communicating is visually, and from my perspective, the work that you do is actually quite interesting. What is it that you're seeing in your own work that sort of makes you say, yes, I'm successful in communicating the message that I'm trying to send with this image?
So I guess when I started my journey in photography, people always told me about a style, and I could never understand what people meant with a style. But I do believe that we all, as we go on into our journey, we all create some sort of style. So sometimes you see someone's work and you can say, oh, that's a Grant, or that's a Simone, or that's so I do believe I have developed my style in a way. And what I would like to communicate with it is, I think, the special moment that I've had when I connected with that seascape or that landscape, when I was up there early or out there early in the morning and the light happened and all of that. So it's just, yeah, that's sort of my communication to say it was such a beautiful place and my happy place and I would love to share that with everyone else.
Okay, cool. As you can see, I've
I
finally
can
got my
see you
camera
back.
working.
Hello.
The software finally updated, and I'm away.
Nice
So
to see
nice,
you back.
nice to see you, and nice for you to be able to see me.
Uh,
So how would you define success in your photography? What is a successful photograph to you?
I think when all the elements come together, it's like when you're out there early in the morning, when the sun comes up, the light's happening, you find your right composition, and you have that emotion, that feeling about really happy that you created something. You go home and then you download, and there is a beautiful image that you can show, I guess, the rest of the world, how the sun came up this morning and what happened this morning, how it was a beautiful moment.
Sure, sure, sure. I'm interested in whether or not people like taking photography, doing their photography alone, or is it a social thing for you? What role does solitude play in your work? Do you prefer being alone, or does sharing the experience add something special?
I enjoy both. So I do love going out with people. I guess having come back to Sydney and learning about all the different beaches, I've found some groups and people that I joined, and I thought that was really beneficial for me to learn about places. Also, the social interaction, just to have a chat and share experience and share ideas and share compositions, I thought is very helpful. On the other hand, I do on my travels, I love to shoot by myself. My husband's very supportive. He usually comes and does a recce with me, but then in the morning, there's no way he's going to be awake and up with me. So I do enjoy both. I love to go out with people and, as I said, share the experience and the ideas, but also I'm very happy to shoot by myself and be in my own little world and do my own little thing and just create my happy moment.
Yeah, yeah. I know exactly that feeling. My wife sometimes will decide to get out of bed at 3:34 in the morning, but very rare.
Very rare. Yes, yeah. I can be back in bed before anyone knows
Yeah,
that
exactly.
it's on, right?
Yeah. I'm usually home by about, in summer anyway, home by about 7:30. So
And no one knows you were actually gone.
that's right. Yeah. How do you think landscape photography has helped you grow or change as a person?
I'm a very outdoorsy person. I love to be out in nature. I love hiking. So yeah, I think it's just a happy place to be. You're surrounded by nature. You can do it in your own pace. So I know I really, yeah, it makes me a happier person. Like I often say to my husband, when I sneak out those mornings and I come back and I'm like, oh, I had so much joy and I'm so happy. And I'm just such a happier person for the rest of the day when I've been out and created something. So yeah, just it's a wonderful thing, I think, for your mind and body.
Definitely, definitely. You mentioned that you took a group away to Africa. I'm really keen to hear a bit more about that trip and how it came about. How was the planning for it? I know it wasn't specifically related to landscape, but if you're doing I'm just interested in tips that you might give people that might be interested in running a similar sort of trip for a landscape trip, because most of the things in terms of planning and understanding the locations you're going to go and all those sorts of things are going to be much the same sort of things. The photography styles are going to be different, but the actual logistics are going to be largely the same, aren't they?
So I guess I lived in South Africa for 6 years in Johannesburg, and we traveled extensively around Africa. So I guess I don't know, we always went on safaris. We also did landscape things and stuff, but especially for safaris now, the more I traveled, again, was that aha moment I had is if you want to get good photos, you need to go to a lodge that actually caters for photographers. So I did go to all those lodges. And then once we moved back to Sydney, I don't know, I had this idea that maybe I could just try and see if anyone's interested in joining me into Africa. And so yeah, the whole logistic, I guess I put it all together. I knew the lodges. I had traveled to the lodges previously on my personal trips. And so then I just talked to them and put it all together and put the whole logistics together. As I know Africa quite well, so that was a bit of an easier part. Again, I knew the right time to go. And so yeah, so I then just put it all together and I put it out there in the world. And I was very lucky and fortunate that 6 wonderful people decided to join me, and we had an amazing trip in. So we did South Africa and Botswana, and then did a little bit of landscape photography in Victoria Falls with the falls. Yeah.
How many days was the trip?
We're just maybe gone just over 2 weeks, 14 days, I think, 14 or 15 days. Yeah, yeah.
And did you add some personal time on for that, or was that entirely the group trip?
No, the first 3 weeks, I actually took a lady who's a friend as well. She said, "Why I would love to go to Madagascar." So I said, "I'm happily taking you." I went to Madagascar early in the year with my husband in May. So again, I knew all the details. I knew where to take her, and that was more. It was a bit of wildlife, it was a bit of landscape, and a bit of people photography. So I spent 19 days with her in Madagascar. Then I had the rest of the group join me. So she joined me as well for the safari. We then did the safari for 14 days. And then I decided I'd do a personal trip. I have a love for portrait photography as well.
Mm-hmm.
And I went to Ethiopia to do some tribal work there.
Fantastic.
Yes. So that made me very
sounds,
happy too.
sounds magical.
It was very magical. So I was gone for 2 months, which was, I think, any longer the family wouldn't have supported it, but 2 months was just enough.
Fair enough. Fair enough. What's one moment in your photography career when you've truly felt awe, like the landscape reminded you of how small we are in the grand scheme of things?
I think probably the thing that comes to mind, we spent COVID in South Africa, and we were still allowed to travel a bit, but we knew we were going to move back here. And there was this one trip I wanted to do to go to Kubu Island in Botswana, which is famous for the beautiful baobab trees. And I have a love for those baobab trees. So I convinced my husband, we're doing a mobile safari and we go there. And it was a long drive to get us there because it's an island, but it's actually in a salt pan. You have to drive a long way through this salt pan, and suddenly there's this island which is full of baobab trees, ancient baobab trees. And we literally just arrived there as the sun was about to set, and I couldn't believe I was there. And I guess I was a bit overwhelmed as well, just because I couldn't believe I was finally there, and then trying to create something and know where to go, because it's still quite a big island. So you had to walk around, but the light was going down. And so it was quite a memorable, but also an emotional time, because I was like, I just couldn't believe I was there. I'm glad I got to spend 2 days there, that I then could figure out where, when that light goes and you think,
Yep,
oh no,
yep.
what am I going to do? And I think
Where do I point the camera? Yeah.
that's exactly, my husband has never seen me like that. I was just so overwhelmed. I was like, I just didn't know what to do. And I'm like, it just, yeah, sticks to my mind. That was just like, I was in such awe and I just didn't know which way to go. But yeah, it was a very special moment. And at the end, I did create some beautiful images there.
Fantastic. Mm. Have you had any scary moments or horror stories in your career?
No, not really. I've been fortunate to actually can't think of any.
Nice.
So I can think of a lot of
That's a
happy
good thing in a
moments.
lot of ways.
I think so. Yes, yeah. So no horror stories.
What about the process? I'm interested. You get to a place and very similar there. Where do I point the camera? What is it that you were looking for? What is it? What was it that was going to inspire the spark that says, okay, that's where I've got to go?
I guess just having been there a little bit earlier, it was just when you get there at sunset and you know that light is going, you've got that little window and it goes quick. I think a recce does help me a lot to figure out what it is I want to create, what it is I want to take, where the sun comes up, where the sun goes down, finding your right composition. I think, like I said before too, if I do go somewhere for the very first time and I plan to go there early in the sunrise, I would do an afternoon recce just to understand, because I think there's nothing worse than arriving in the middle of the night and you don't know where to point your camera. And I
Mm.
learned that from my experience to Kubu Island, where it's like I had such a beautiful moment and I just didn't know.
Are there any moments that you've had where you've just sat and taken it all in instead of taking photos?
No, Grant, I do that often too. I'm not a snap, so I don't snap away all the time. So sometimes I feel like just being in the moment is just as special. It is. So I do not always take thousands or hundreds of photos. Sometimes I'm really just enjoying the moment, because I just being in that nature. Yeah, so in May, I went to the Avenue of Baobabs in Madagascar. And again, that also was one of those special moments where I researched it so long and I couldn't believe I was finally there. And then being amongst those giants and just, again, it was a very similar moment in my Kubu Island when we got there just on sunset, because it was such a long drive. And again, I was a bit overwhelmed, but so then I reminded myself that just enjoy the moment and you come back tomorrow. And yes, the lights are always different, but still it's, so yeah, enjoying the moment can be just as special sometimes as taking that major magic shot.
Absolutely. Fantastic. You've come back from Namibia or Madagascar or South Africa or wherever you've been. Are you straight into editing? Are you one that has to edit immediately and in the moment, or do you prefer to let things marinate for a while and then come back to them later?
I actually let them marinate for quite a bit. And a lot of people always say, post because you're on all these beautiful locations. But so yeah, I don't edit on the go or on the travel. I do download my images. So after a shoot, I do go back and I do
Sure.
down. And I think also it does give me an idea if I was on the right track or if I do have another opportunity to go back and shoot the same scene again, just to see if I should have stood more or do a little bit better, or if I'm happy with what I got. But
Yeah.
yeah, so I do let it marinate. I think I do have that emotional attachment to my images, that I do need that time to come back home, let them sit. And so I've just been to Africa for 2 months, and I think I started off in editing a few images of Ethiopia, but the whole safari, there's thousands of images
I can imagine.
I
Yeah.
haven't even looked at. So that'll
Just
be
wildlife, of course, you're going to be there with high speed,
exactly. So there was
rolling that shutter like mad. Yeah.
yes. Oh, that was crazy. But yeah, so I let it marinate for a bit.
No, awesome. And what does processing look like for you? Are you into lots of layers in Photoshop, or is it all in Lightroom? How do you get into your processing, and what is, without going into all of the nitty-gritty details, what does your general process look like?
So I generally start off in Lightroom and I do my basic adjustments there. And I guess it has come a long way where you can do a lot of adjustments and even layers there, but I still keep it to, the minimum. And then I do go into Photoshop and I do a lot of dodge and burn and then layers depending on the image. But yeah, so I do finish off in Photoshop.
Uh-huh. And is it mostly just contrast adjustments? What sort of things are you doing?
I guess it really depends on the image, but I would say I do a lot of dodge and burn just to get the contrast or the light or the shadows out in my image. Obviously, if something has blown out a little bit or the sky is too light, I would try to darken that a little bit. Yeah, so it's I would say mainly, the contrast, sometimes a bit of the color. I guess it really depends on the image itself, but I would say I'm probably more true to the scene girl.
Yep.
So
Yep.
what I see is
That's the
generally,
feeling I get from your shots.
yes, yeah. So that's the way it was is the way I try, and I guess that's a landscape in a way. It you don't want to say, oh, it was so saturated. I don't know. I don't like a lot of saturation, so
Yeah.
so keep it a little bit more natural.
Yeah. It's hard to do some skies though when they are so saturated. You get that pre-dawn light with everything going bright orange and red, and it's
True. Sometimes you have to go the
yeah.
other side and try to
I'm
desaturate
usually
a little bit.
desaturating images by about 30 or 40%, sometimes even more. I was working through some from Tarameta, even though it was a dull day, I was still knocking down saturation. I think I did one as much as 75% just to make it look more like what I thought it looked like.
But then the camera captured it, so then it was like that too, right? So
That's
I
it.
think
Yeah.
that's the other thing. And I know I can see you always like your flow and stuff, which is
Oh, absolutely.
yeah.
I can't help that.
No, we get some beautiful flow around there.
Yeah, definitely. Tarameta's amazing for that. It's funny, I was actually saying to somebody the other day, I was down there on Saturday, they've just gone, and I was down there with a friend of mine, and I'd been there about 3 weeks before, and the place just looked completely and utterly different.
Yeah. It's crazy, isn't it? I guess it used to have that lovely channel and you could always pick composition, but that's no longer there.
Oh, it was all full of sand on Saturday. The whole thing was just sand. There was a funny little lagoon thing that had formed, which I'd never seen on the beach before, where one of the channels was.
Yeah.
But
Incredible the nature, how it changes.
absolutely. It's one of the reasons why I love the place and going back there so often myself. It's
No
just,
shot is the same. No
yeah.
image is the same. Yeah.
What are you doing in terms of with your work? Are you just sharing it online, or are you printing it? Are you looking to create projects with it, like books or something like that?
I guess it's a lot for myself and online. I do have a website I put things on sometimes. I'd have printed a few images, but obviously we only have so much wall space that we can hang things up. I used to do a lot of photo books when we traveled because we lived overseas for so long, to all the places we traveled with my boys. And so it's great memories I created, but I haven't done anything like that lately. So I think maybe I was just too excited to be back here and being out shooting again. I think I'm rather out in the field than sitting in front of my computer.
I know that feeling too.
I might have to think of some projects.
Very good. Have you ever struggled to find inspiration with your photography?
Not really. I love to travel, and I guess since being back, I have been fortunate to be able, I can go out anytime I want. So Yeah, not really struggling. I think sometimes we all probably hit a little bit of a low, but I would say my camera's never too long in its bag. I always take it back out. There is a trip coming up or there's something. So no, I would say my camera never sits too long in a shelf.
Yeah, there's always something to take a photo of.
Yes, yeah. So no, not really. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm interested in where photographers see photography in society and where they see it going.
I don't know how to, can you explain
Oh,
that?
okay. So what do you think is photography's place in society?
A lot of people have taken up photography, I think. So I think it's something people like to, it's a social thing in a way.
Mhm.
It's taking beautiful images, going traveling, going out on adventures. On the other hand, I guess you have the whole challenge of AI. So I
Yeah.
think that's a bit of a problem, but I guess within landscape photography, not really, because you can't create a landscape out of AI. It's different in other genres, I think. So I think, yeah, landscape photography in society is something that brings people together, that people want to go out and experience something and travel and take in a seascape, go for a hike and go up on a mountainscape or things like that.
Yeah. Sitting in front of a keyboard is not going to do that for you. Yeah.
No, I think you can put in mountain and whatever else. I think there's still that I think that connection that you have to a landscape and that you can't create out of an AI or out of a computer.
Yeah. No, I know exactly what you mean there.
Yeah.
What do you see as being the biggest challenge facing photographers right now?
I guess it goes back a little bit to the AI that everyone says, oh, that's AI, that's AI. And I think even sometimes if you use some tools like the removal tool in Photoshop, it even says there's AI in it because it has a content aware thing.
What do you see as the future of photography?
I think photography will always be present because we always want to record things or we always want to show travels, or let's say you can't take away taking a family photo or taking a portrait or capturing a scene, a landscape. So I think there'll always be a future for photography.
Yeah, yeah. I think you're quite right. I I agree. I think there's challenges for people in stock photography, maybe particularly in relation to people, less, but event photography and landscape photography, I just don't. And so things like weddings and birthdays and all those sorts of things, I don't think any of that's going anywhere soon. But product photography definitely has some real challenges in front of it.
It's somewhere where there's no emotions attached to it. But I guess a portrait of yourself or your family, there's an emotion that a landscape that is the way it is, you can't recreate that any other way. I think there'll always be a place for photography.
What's your favorite thing about being a photographer?
Being out in the field and being out in nature and have an excuse to travel sometimes and just going to new locations and just being in the moment, to seeing the things with my own eyes and capturing it with my camera.
Awesome. And what's your least favorite thing about being a photographer?
I don't prefer to be at home. I don't mind editing, but I don't like to be at home all the time. I would rather be out in the field taking pictures than sitting at home being on the computer. But obviously it's part of it. So I do it. But yeah, my favorite is to be out. My least favorite is to be in front of the computer.
Fair enough. What advice would you give a younger Simone before she picked up a camera?
I would just say, just keep on practicing, keep on going, and keep on taking pictures and just create and do it for yourself and don't worry what anyone else thinks. says.
That's brilliant. What's the best or worst piece of advice anyone's given you?
I guess the best piece of advice someone gave to me once was, it's like when you go out in a group and if you look at your neighbor's back of the screen, the picture always looks better than your own. And you think, oh, why didn't I get that? But then I guess it's just because it always looks better on someone else's screen. But then once you go home and download, you do have to, you also have a great image. But I think that was the thing. That's the advice that someone gives. Just worry about what you have. Don't worry about what anyone else has. So I think that was always good advice. And that's always what I remind myself. It's just, don't worry. It all looks good on your screen.
Yeah. I'm jealous as anything of some of your African shots that I've seen, the ones that you have posted. I know I'll go there sometime, but I can't compare, and because I haven't been there. And
yes, you will get there one day. It's
one
a
day,
beautiful
I hope
place.
so.
And I can give you all the advice you need.
Fantastic. I look forward to that. If you weren't a photographer, what would you be?
That's a good question. I don't know. I'm happy to be a photographer.
Awesome.
Maybe I would be a travel, I don't know, a traveler, or I don't know, someone that travels.
Okay, that's good enough.
Yeah.
Are there any photographers out there you think I should be talking to?
I thought about that question, and I know you've interviewed so many amazing photographers already, and I'm sure you have so many more on your list. So I thought, how about to suggest some landscape photographers from South Africa to you?
Awesome. Yeah.
So there is a landscape photographer. His name is Kyle Gutch.
Yep.
I actually went on a workshop with him. That time I went to Namibia in 2021.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's another amazing landscape photographer called Hogart Milan.
Yep.
And yeah, that probably would be my two suggestions to you.
Fantastic. Thanks very much. I'll definitely put them on the list.
Thank you.
I've got one more question, and a lot of people want to get to the bottom of this, not just in the photography community, but society in general. Do you like pineapple on pizza?
It's not something I would order, no, but if there is pizza that has pineapple on it, I do eat it.
Fair enough. All right. Thank you very much for taking the time to talk to me, Simone. It's been wonderful talking to you and getting to know you a little bit better. Where can people find your work?
Thank you very much for having me, Grant. And people can find my work on my website. It's www.simoneosbornephotography.com. And they can also find me on the socials. On Instagram, it's Sim Osborne. And then I have my other one because I do love portraiture. So I keep them a little bit separate, my landscapes from my portraiture. Again, it's on Simone Osborne Photography, and same on Facebook, Simone Osborne Photography or Simone Osborne.
Brilliant. Thanks very much, Simone.
Thank you very much, Grant. That was amazing. Thank you.
Cheers.
Okay, cheers.
Thanks again for listening to Landscape Photography World. I hope you enjoyed the show, and keep listening because I'll be joined by some great guests in upcoming episodes. You can find my work in this podcast at grantswinburnephotography.com, along with prints, photography gear. I'm also on Vero, Twitter, YouTube, Instagram, and Facebook. Don't forget to like and subscribe. I'm Grant Swinburne. Hope to see you out shooting soon.